Hello everyone, I'm Jesus and welcome to the next episode of The Road to Old School MTG. So this is a special video regarding the Power 9. So as I was getting into joining Old School, of course the reputation of the Power 9 is very well known to most Magic players, especially those like me that had experience within the first few years of the game. But I definitely was thinking more about it as I knew I was about to join the format of Old School Magic, 93-94 Old School. And I just, the thought of, the Power 9, why these cards in particular were decided that these are the 9 most powerful cards from the base set, right? So the original set, Alpha, Beta, Unlimited. And it was just a consensus that these were the top 9. Why stop at 9? Why not 10? I'm not sure, but it is what it is. But that mentality was the one that got me thinking, right? Why these 9 cards? Some of them I think is very obvious, but it got me thinking, what could be, what cards missed out on being the top within the Power 9, or what cards maybe should have been, like after the fact, with all this knowledge that we have nowadays. Could other cards have been picked instead? And if we take 93 and 94 Old School as a whole, right, which is the first 2 years of Magic, what would the Power 9 for that be, right? If we included more sets, right? Because nobody just plays Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, right? Unless you're in like an Alpha 40 or something, or Beta 40 league. But that's an obscure, those are obscure formats. Right? So most people that are into 93-94 Old School, they play the sets from this. Some exclude Falling Empires, but basically they play all the sets from 93-94. So if you consider that, like what additional cards could be added to the Power 9? Or in my case, what I've decided to do is I created an alternate Power 9. Basically the next 9 cards after the Power 9. But for me, I don't necessarily say the next 9 cards, as in these are basically cards 10 through 18, right? 1 through 9 being the Power 9. Some of these cards I feel could very well replace some of the cards within the Power 9. At least, of course, this is all my personal opinion, just how I feel about these 9 additional cards that I'm going to present to you. But like I said, it just the concept of the Power 9 got me thinking about this. Why these 9 cards? What other cards could have been included within the Power 9 from the original base set? But then expanding within the Power 9, right? Because nobody just plays ABU, at least other than some fringe formats. To truly get I would feel the full range of the game, at least for our format, we should include what would happen if you included the full range of 93-94 sets. So this is just this is a bit of a thought experiment. So I have in the middle the Power 9, so you have your 5 Moxes, your Black Lotus, and then you have the 3 blue power, Ancestral, Recall, Time Walk, and Time Twister. So for the artifacts, pretty self-explanatory, right? So it's free ramp, 1 per color, and then in addition, the Black Lotus gives you a huge jump in ramp. Just a one-time thing, but you can definitely do very crazy things with that. And then of course the blue power, Ancestral Recall. Me personally, I feel that's the most powerful card in the format, in the game, perhaps even. Only beaten by, I think, Demonic Consultation or something like that, right? So there's another card that's black that draws you 7 cards, but it's only for ante. You have to ante an additional card. That truly is the most powerful card in the game, right? But And initially that ante was expected as part of the game. So for a time, that card was the most powerful card in the game. But ante fell through the wayside, as it should have. And Ancestral Recall is now pretty well, I would say by a good chunk of the community, thought as number one. Me personally, I think it's number one. Time Walk, of course, gives you an extra turn just for 2 mana, and Time Twister, you can recoup your hand. So if you get that Time Twister with no cards in hand, or even just a few cards, or maybe even just lands in your hand, you know, nothing that's important, that will give you such a boost. Of course, it does that. That one is the one that's considered the weakest, right? Because you do give a benefit to your opponent as well. But since you're the one who's initially getting that benefit, because it's still your turn, and within this format, right, you can get that Black Lotus back that you used to cast it. You can get that Ancestral Recall again. You can get that Time Walk again. Or if you didn't get it, you're gonna shuffle up. Maybe you get it this second time with a fresh new 7 hand, right? So it was considered the weakest for a while. So now I think maybe even Time Walk. I would say Time Walk is maybe the weakest now out of the Power 9. Time Twister may very well have overtaken it. It's not going to overtake Ancestral, but in the right circumstances, it very well can be more powerful than either Ancestral or Time Walk. So we know the Power 9 is well established, and definitely I agree with the consensus. The only thing with the consensus that these are extremely powerful, and it's very obvious. But what could have been, what would other people choose as the Power 9? What could have replaced some of these cards? And if you expand to the full range of 93, 94, what other cards could have been there? So on the left side now you see my personal selection for an alternate Power 9. So these cards could swap with some of the cards in the Power 9, right? Then I'll talk about, what could swap for what. Of course, this is all subjective. This is my own personal opinion. But like I said, just the initial concept of the Power 9 made me think about, okay, this is what the Power 9 is. What missed the cut? And, why not just expand it to 93, 94? Why just keep it to the original set? Truly make it a Power 9 of the format. So with those thoughts in mind, and in no particular order, I'm gonna go through my alternate Power 9. And like I said, this is not necessarily cards 10 through 18. These are cards that I feel could have replaced some of the cards in the Power 9. Some more than others. I think it'll be obvious. But at least, there could have been a conversation to be had. Balance as the top here. So balance, it can be a time mind twist. It can be an Armageddon. It can be a Wrath of God, all wrapped up in one. Played at the right time, or not even at the right time. You don't necessarily have to wait for the perfect situation. Oops. But of course, if you wait for that perfect spot, it's just so devastating. And also, it is very well splashable. The blue power is so strong that decks that don't have any other blue in their decks will very routinely find a way to fit these 3 cards, in particular Ancestral Recall, and to a lesser extent Time Walk, and then Time Twister, depending on what the deck is trying to do, right? It might favor one of the 3 over the other. Same thing with the Moxes. Even if you're not particularly playing a certain color, a lot of decks would still include all 5 Moxes just for that colorless ramp. Most of the tier 1 decks in old school have all the full Power 9. regardless of what their deck is. That's how strong they are, right? But I feel balance. So if I had to replace a card from the Power 9 with balance, I feel the ones that I could, nip and swap with. And when I say swap, not necessarily like, they have a similar power, effect, but, just the power of the card itself within what it does. I think you could swap it for Time Walk, Time Twister, not necessarily Ancestral. Maybe even, like honestly, making a case for one of the Moxes as well. Maybe not necessarily Black Lotus because it's just so explosive and it can fit anything. But I could definitely see people, as opposed to just playing the full Power 9. Okay, my deck doesn't play black, but you know what? It doesn't even play white, but you know what? I'm gonna try a way to fit balance in there, right? Or at the very least, even as a sideboard piece, right? It's just so powerful, I feel, and it is part of the base original set. So I feel, especially since blue is so overrepresented in the Power 9, a third of it is just blue. Balance is definitely something that I feel could have been included, and especially nowadays, that we know, and we maximize the power of balance even more so now. I think definitely, people who have the full Power 9, there are definitely a lot of players. Me, the last piece I'm missing is the Time Twister. A few months ago finally got that Black Lotus, so I'm 8 out of 9 to go. But that's not a set rule where all of the top tier decks play the full Power 9. I would say a good chunk of them do, over 50%. If you see like deck lists from like LobsterCon or stuff like that, you will see a whole bunch of decks, no matter how far they placed, have a full complement of the Power 9. But for those who don't, and maybe they do own all the cards, but they choose not to, what beat out, that train of thought of just putting the Power 9 in everything? What do they choose to do instead? Balance, I think, could very well be one of those cards that they chose. Okay, like me, right? I don't have that Time Twister yet. I'll get it soon, eventually. But the reason why I don't have it is because I feel like, especially for the decks that I like, I feel like it doesn't fit, or it's it could fit, but it's not as explosive. Like say, I would rather have a balance than a Time Twister, basically, and that's why I do have in my Armageddon deck a balance as opposed to a Time Twister. If I felt that Time Twister was so crucial, I would get it. But I do feel that balance is crucial, and I do have it there. So that's my thought on balance. So what do you guys think could replace it with the Power 9? So another default, it's in every deck, and this one truly is in basically every deck. Chaos Orb. So what could it trade with? So it is definitely pretty weak as opposed to the other things, drawing 3 cards, ramping up, extra turn, draw 7 cards. So definitely I do feel like it is a step down, but there's no denying it is the most universal removal. And if you notice on the side, my alternate Power 9, I did not include swords. I very well could have, but the main reason why I didn't is because you have Chaos Orb over here. In old school deck recursion, playing with the Graveyard is just not as well done. I'm not saying it's not a thing. Definitely, it is a thing, but it's not top tier. Or at least I haven't seen it being top tier in a while. It'll win some tournaments every now and then, but it is more of because of a surprise factor, right? That is unusual, and most people don't sideboard against it, against like graveyard manipulation. But in general, right, just in terms of just dealing with anything, this Chaos Orb will deal with anything that's in the game. Of course, it can be disenchanted, like destroyed in reaction to it, right? So it's not, it's not without its, its weaknesses. But it is very much so in practically every deck. Like, I can't see how a deck wouldn't have it, other than you actually don't own the card. If you own the card, I don't see why you wouldn't fit it. As opposed to, let's say, Time Twister. Man, you're Time Twister, but you're playing, you're not playing blue. Then you very well may not have it. If you're going to make the effort to splash for blue, all right, you put in an Ancestral instead, maybe in a Time Warp, but Time Twister, not necessarily. Same thing with the Moxes. You may not be playing certain colors, and maybe the benefit of that colorless ramp is not so strong. Maybe you're playing Green Weenie. Most of the colors, the casting cost is going to be 1 green. Maybe 1 in the color is okay, but that's in that case, having, if you're mono green, but maybe you don't want to have all 4 of the other non-colored Moxes. Maybe 1 or 2 to still give you ramp, but you don't want to devote so many cards to that extra ramp, right? So then, what do you put instead of that? Everybody, practically everybody has a Chaos Orb, right? So just because how widely it's used, and because people will routinely, like I said, it's not a completely tried and true that everybody plays the Power 9, regardless of the deck you want to play. Most decks have them, though. The most biggest tier have all 9, I would say, or a good chunk of them. But not every top tier has all 9. But every top tier deck has a Chaos Orb. So there's a discussion there as to, it can, depending on your game plan, it definitely will be a better fit than some within the Power 9. And it's played by basically everyone. So I think it has a discussion in terms of the relative power to some of these cards, especially on the artifact side, swapping it for a Chaos Orb. Alright, Demonic Tutor. So this is another card that players will find a way to sneak into their deck regardless of the color they play. Balance, not so much. I don't necessarily see Balance sneaked in into as a one-off or single white card. You might see it, but honestly I would say it's rare. But Demonic Tutor, that's more common. You definitely see this more, like you play Green Weenie, let's say. A lot of decks might still find that a way to fit black in there just to add that Demonic Tutor. So let's compare power now, right? So because that's a consideration. What could it replace? Oh, and I forgot, right? Chaos Orb is also part of the base set, so it could have definitely been here as opposed to maybe a Time Twister. Demonic Tutor, what could it replace? Well, first of all, the reason why it's so strong is because of the Power 9, right? The cards that you can get. So the biggest trade is really with the artifacts, right? Because you don't want to trade with the other 3, because that's what you want to get. Especially even that Black Lotus, right? That can facilitate a lot of craziness, just having that big rush of mana, right? Or maybe you need a particular mana because, right, you just screwed, your mana screwed. So it's so versatile, and of course it very often will get you the thing that's going to cause you to win, right? On its own, right? It doesn't win you the game, right? This card does not win you the game. What you get out of it will win you the game. Demonic, right? And it's very common. It's cliche nowadays. Demonic Tutor for an Ancestral, right? That's your go-to play. If you draw an Ancestral, right, you cast it right away. If you draw a Demonic Tutor, you go fetch your Ancestral for it, right? So, and it is part of the base set. So I guess like if it needed to trade, I guess maybe Time Twister, maybe even Time Walk, although I guess not, honestly, because that's part of the strength, right? You want to get these cards, so I think it would fight more with, or swap more with, in particular, some of the Moxes, right? Not, I wouldn't think maybe not Black Lotus, but remember, this is subjective. Maybe you guys, some of you might consider that a better swap, right? If the Power 9 had included the Moxes, the Blue Power, and the Mana Tutor. All right, so now we're going outside of the base set. And of course, Library of Alexandria. So in fact, this card was the card that originally got me thinking about this thought experiment right here. Like, it's such a, first of all, it's such an iconic card, such a powerful card, such a game-breaking card, that, like, this is when I was a bit ignorant about the sets, right? Like, I didn't realize, this is, Arabian Nights, right? So I didn't look at this, what set the card is from, right? I just cared about what the card did. So that got me thinking, like, wait, after I saw the Power 9, I'm like, wait, why the hell is Library of Alexandria not here? Like, it's definitely stronger than this. Time Walk and Time Twister, you can definitely debate that it's stronger than all the artifacts. The only thing that you might think it's not stronger than, or maybe on par to, is Ancestral. The Mana Tutor for Ancestral, that's very common. The Mana Tutor for Library, that's also pretty common as well. So it is just, or turn 1 Library. There are people who would scoop if you just do turn 1 Library. If you do turn 1 Ancestral, I don't think anybody's gonna scoop, right? Like, they're still gonna play out the game. Some people might, though, right? I'm not saying they won't. But turn 1 Library, the scooping turn 1 to a turn 1 Library is definitely a thing, because of just the power it has. So definitely, I feel if we expanded the concept of the Power 9 to 93-94, this, or if you round off the Power 9, make it a nice sweet rounded number to 10, this would be the 10th card. If you want to be, if you want to shoehorn in Library and maintain the Power 9 status, take out the Time Suits or take out the Time Walk. It's stronger. It's just stronger. Right. And I think it's stronger in general than the Moxes, not particularly Black Lotus. But or like I said, maybe so. I think it would actually, yeah. I think the only thing that is not stronger too is Ancestral, but I don't think it's weaker than. I think it's on par. If you're on par with the most powerful card in the game, or it's debatable if you're on par, then you deserve to be in the Power 9, right? The only reason why it's not here is because it's from Arabian Nights. That's the only reason. Alright, so next card, Mana Drain. So first of all, it's keeping up with blue, right, as being the color that's, the only colored, cards that are within the Power 9 are blue. The ramp that you can get, so two lands, you have Mana Drain open. It is so easy for, especially in old school, you can do very degenerate things. That Black Lotus, those Moxes, Mana Vaults, it's just so easy to make so much mana. Mishra's Workshops, but if the player knows you're playing blue, they might think twice about being so explosive. Like, let's say you have a turn 1 Trike. Well, you cannot. Well, yeah, I mean, opponent goes first, land, Sapphire, then they have Mana Drain available, right? And now it's your turn. You draw. you're playing robots, you can do that turn 1 trike, right? That's pretty freaking devastating. Mox, Black Lotus, or just Black Lotus and Workshop. 2-card combo, boom, turn 1 trike. But you have that mana drain, and then you cast your own trike. So, or you power that X spell, or you had 2 blue already. You drop another blue, and now you can cast your Time Twister. You Time Twister, get new cards, and now you still have mana floating. It's, you know, it's so strong. It negates. It's so swingy as well, right? And because of the things that many decks have, like that Time Twister, even that Black Lotus, right? If you drain life, mana drain, right? It gives you, of course, a lot of colorless, but maybe you don't necessarily have the color mana for it. That Black Lotus will solve a lot of that problem, and you can really maximize the power and the extra mana you get from mana drain, right? So you deny your opponent, plus you ramp yourself up immensely, right? You follow it up, like I said, with a Time Twister, or with the next card on the list. That's it's very it's a very powerful thing, and it's will make people think twice about being explosive. Basically, they might not cast that turn 1 trike unless they have 2 threats in hand, right? They have a trike and maybe a let's say, or maybe they have 3 trikes, right? Or maybe a trike and a Juggernaut, trike and a Suchi. Or they might do the Suchi first, just in case you have that mana drain to save the trike later, right? So basically, it's making you hesitate, making you think twice. So definitely in the running for what it does. I think it's very strong. It could once again, like maybe Time Walk, you could trade for a Time Walk in particular. Time Twister, like you want to have that mana drain with that Time Twister, right, to maximize the mana that you get and things that you can do with it. You can make a case you can trade for, in terms of raw power for the Moxes. Maybe not particularly Black Lotus, but I think there's a discussion there. Now remember, what can you do with that mana? Mind Twist. So Mind Twist is part of the base set. I forgot to mention that mana drain is legend, so it is not part of the base set, right? So that's the reason why. Of course, it is very clearly less power than most of the Power 9, but the mana drain, right? But I think you could have that discussion. Mind Twist was in the base set. Yeah, I think it trades with some of these cards here. I think power for power, it's more powerful than certain cards. In terms of power, I think it's powerful than any of the Moxes. If you told me the Power 9 was all these cards, but you trade Mox Emerald for Mind Twist, yeah, I could see that. It is just so strong, and like I said, it is so easy to get mana in old school. Turn 1 Mind Twist for 4, 5, 6, even 7 is not only not unheard of, but it's very common. Right, so like I said before, Demonic Tutor for a library, right, or like turn 1 library, and then people might scoop to that. This is definitely something you might scoop to. You get Mind Twisted for your full hand. You can definitely not unheard of to be Mind Twisted for 7. In fact, that has happened to me. In fact, I got Mind Twisted for like 9 or 10. I don't know how, but I drew extra cards and I got Mind Twisted for over 7. So for power, it's a crazy card. and I think it can trade for several of these cards. It cannot trade for Ancestral, like I said. Ancestral is like the best card in the game. The only thing that is on par to that is Library, but I think Mind Twist is a very close second. So I think Mind Twist will beat out, should have beat out Time Walk. You ripping 4 or 5 cards out of your opponent's hand is stronger than you getting an extra turn. The Moxes, also a big reason why they're so strong is that, of course, they come in multiple, right? There's 5 Moxes of, that's why so many people put all 5, regardless of what colors they're playing, because of that extra ramp. But that's also part of the power, right? That you put all 5 in there, right? But on a 1-to-1 power level, a Mind Twist is stronger than any one individual Mox, right? Maybe not Mox Sapphire, right? Because of the power 9. You might want to keep, of course, you need that. It's helpful to have that jet for the Mind Twist. But power for power, like it could very easily trade with any one of these. So in hindsight, I think it should have been in the power 9. If you say the power 9 is Moxes, Black Lotus, Ancestral, Time Walk, and Mind Twist, I would believe you. Alright, next card. This is definitely the weakest card. This is the one I was debating between this and Swords. So it's from Antiquities, right? So it's from a following set, right? That came later on. So it wasn't part of the base set. But similar to that Chaos Sword, right? Where it's just everywhere. This library is in a lot of decks as well, right? Because it makes colorless as well, right? So it doesn't make any colored mana. So it's not particularly, made for any particular deck color, I should say, right? But it is very obvious, like it's more beneficial to certain kinds of game plans. Right? But those are colorless, sources, colorless cards. Similar here, you have this Mishra's Factory, so it gets put in most, if not most of the, I would say most of the top tier decks will have a full play set, and people will fit these in kind of like they try to fit in Ancestral. You'll see Green Weenie with 4 Mishra's Factories. They just make it work. It's just so powerful. They pump each other. They make you mana. They're a creature. They survive Wrath of Gods. You have to waste your disenchants on them, and then which makes your Moxes still be open, right? Or you got to decide between disenchanting your factory or disenchanting that Chaos Orb they still got, right? Or they have to keep it and not use it because they fear that you're going to drop a factory at any time, right? So not only because of its power, but because of the way that people react to it and have to react to it, is where its power comes from. It affects the game, but it also affects the game when it's not even in the game. It's not even in play. So for power, definitely this is the weakest out of all the cards here. So I don't necessarily feel like it might trade with anything in particular, right? It's similar to the Chaos Orb, right? So it's just, I feel like if there was a power 10, you can make the case for Chaos Orb. Just like if there was a power 10, you can make a case that Mishra's Factory could have been the 10th card. I think it could trade with the Moxes, one particular Mox. Like I said, the biggest power from the Moxes is that there's 5 of them. But on a 1-to-1 level, power level, I think it could trade. I don't know if this could trade with any of the blue power, and I don't know if it could trade with the Black Lotus. But I think that's, if there's a debate, it's on the artifact side that it could trade with something. Or if not, like I said, it could have been the honorary number 10. But that's Factory. Now this one, that's another card. So between Library of Alexandria and Mishra's Workshop. These are the cards that, especially Library, definitely, right? That's very clearly like so overpowered. But Mishra's Workshop made me think, okay, Black Lotus is in the Power 9. Why is Mishra's Mishra's Workshop not in the Power 9? It's the same thing, but it's permanent. And you can have 4 of them. Like, of course, right? You can only cast artifacts. But whew, there are a lot of good artifacts in old school. Robots, of course. The power of robots, a big part of it is workshop. You know they're playing robots and they get that turn 1, turn 2 workshop, especially turn 1. You know they're gonna cast something turn 1. Turn 1 workshop, they play all 5 moxes, drop a mox, and then boom, you got yourself a turn 1 Juggernaut, turn 1 Suchi. It's just, or you cast that, you ramp yourself with Power Stones, Mana Vaults. Sorry, I'm back. As I was saying, it can facilitate further ramp, especially like with robots, right? But it might have some additional ramp, it might not. Honestly, with 4 workshops and the full complement of moxes, that may very well be enough. But you do see they might add flowers, mana vaults, stuff like that, so it can facilitate further ramps, which can then facilitate bigger and bigger creatures at faster and faster turns. And then with it being permanent, it'll continuously do that, right? So you drop that Mishra's Factory turn 1, that means you can, and then you drop a land next turn, or you drop a mox, that means you can always cast a Suchi. You're always have the possibility of playing that Suchi, playing that Juggernaut. It's just too strong. So this card, I definitely feel it could trade with stuff. It makes a case that it can trade with anything in the artifact side, even Black Lotus. I think it makes a case for Time Twister, maybe even Time Walk. Not, of course, not Ancestral, like I said. But I feel like, yeah, this is definitely more powerful than a few of these cards here. Which particular cards, that's up to you, right? Up to in the eye of the beholder. But me personally, yeah, this is stronger than some of these cards that are in the Power 9. You could trade with it. Alright, and finally, Wheel of Fortune. Discussing Workshop again. Right, so it is from Antiquities, right? So it was not part of the base set. But that's the only reason why it's not in the Power 9. If it was, it would be maybe these over here, right? I keep on blocking that Time Twister, right? It is still, it's between the Time Walk and Time Twister, as opposed to, the 2 debatable ones, or from the weakest from the Power 9. But that's why these will be the first to go for a Workshop. If we included the full complement 93 and 94, Workshop should have been in the Power 9. Now, a card that could have actually been in the Power 9 because it was in the base set. This is my final card for the alternate Power 9, Wheel of Fortune. So it does the same effect as Time Twister, except it doesn't have the addition of redrawing your graveyard back into your library, right? So because of that, you're not gonna get that Ancestral again, so you cannot cast that again. With Time Twister, it happens so freaking often that someone will use their Black Lotus to cast that Time Twister, and then they freaking get their own Black Lotus back again. Or they had cast the Ancestral previously, and then boom, they magically have that again, right? So honestly, sometimes it's even like a little suspicious, like, I'm not gonna lie. But I've seen it happen like in real life. So I'm like, it's just, I guess, I'm still getting used to that, I guess, like, or I haven't seen it enough. But I'm beginning to see enough of Time Twister and getting back your Black Lotus that you used to Time Twister, and getting back that ancestor that you cast before the Time Twister and you get it right back. I'm seeing it often enough where like I'm second guessing that less and less, right? So basically, I'm believing it. I am a believer. I don't particularly believe that people are cheating, right? It's and when I see it in real life, especially, right, I'm like, okay, there's no way he cheated. It's a casual game, or or like I was seeing his hands the whole time. It just didn't happen. So I kind of went on a tangent there, right? But that's just to explain the power of Time Twister, right? That's why I think it has grown in power in terms of acceptance as being overtaking Time Walk. But if of course that power of draw 7, extremely strong. So I think Wheel of Fortune definitely has a place. For it's debatable that it could have been included in the Power 9 or the original Power 9. Replacing that Time Twister with a Time Walk, yeah, I can see that. In fact, that's very common. People will try to fit that Wheel of Fortune in decks that don't have red, right? Similar to Time Twister, right? Ancestral, the Power 9. Like I said, balance doesn't really get done that too much. Not that it never happens, but it's not so much. Like I said, Demonic Tutor gets shoved in there pretty often. Well, which reminds me, right? That is a drawback to Manager, right? It cannot be. You cannot include it as as an additional. You can't cheat your way into a Manager, basically, right? You gotta play blue. But Wheel of Fortune, you can definitely find a way to fit it, right? Just one red. That draws 7. Of course, like your opponents also draw 7, but it's still your turn. But because of the recursion, Time Twister is definitely more powerful. You definitely are more likely, right, to get that Time Walk that you already got. That ancestor that you already got before that Black Lotus that you used to cast the Time Twister. So that's definitely a thing. But it is a very powerful spell. So you do see the full Power 9, like I said, in a lot of decks. You don't necessarily see the Power 9 plus Time Twister, plus Wheel of Fortune, being there. But a big part of why blue gets shoved into decks, and people just find a way to play blue, is because Ancestral Recall. And since you're already cheating blue into your deck anyway, might as well add Time Walk and then Time Twister, right? So I feel that's really the main reason why people don't also, in addition, find a way to fit this Wheel of Fortune, because unless they're already playing red, right? If you're playing red, you're playing burn, you need that wheel definitely. I recently got a CE wheel as well. I don't think I've ever used it once. Oh no, I think I did use it once. But it's just just a iconic card, and it's like a Demonic Tutor, something that's restricted, but it's so OP you want to have it just in case. But yeah, I think it could trade with certain cards, or at least it's definitely makes its case as the 10th card in the Power 10. It is part of the base set. It's not going to be Time Twister, of course. And like I said, the reason why you don't see this fit in, like you see the blue power, is because of Ancestral Recall. You're already cheating your way into blue because of Ancestral Recall. Then it just makes sense that you could also add Time Walk and Time Twister, right? They all require one blue. But if you, in addition, also put Wheel of Fortune, now you got to fit in red when you didn't want to. That may be pushing it, right? So the only reason why Wheel of Fortune, I feel, is not in the Power 9 is because it's not blue. If it was blue, maybe yeah, I could make a case that the Power 9 would be Moxus, Black Lotus, Ancestor, Time Twister, and Wheel of Fortune. I could definitely see that. So it can trade. I think it can trade in particular with that Time Walk. Yeah, honestly, yeah, those Moxes, like I said, the big reason why the Mox is so strong is as a collective. But on a one-to-one level, yeah, an individual wheel for power could trade with any of the Moxes. All right, so yeah, so this is in particular my list of the Power 9. I want to take a peek. Okay, just wanted to see if I put a maybe board there for any additional cards, because I know I was playing around with the maybe board before. I had, like I said, I had that Source of Plowshares previously. There. I was debating between the Swords and the Factory, right? But honestly, very well, it could have swapped as well. All right, but that's my alternate Power 9. Like I said, you could think about it as cards 10 through 18, or in particular, I didn't think about it in those terms too much. I thought about it more in the terms of, what could these cards replace within the Power 9? Especially, that turn Power 9, it was turned, pretty early, right? So, but now with so much more Magic experience, in the books, Magic history in the books, could you make a case for, that Wheel of Fortune should have been part of the Power 9 the whole time? Definitely with Mind Twist, I think it definitely could have made a case that it should have been there. The Demonic Tutor makes a case. Chaos Orb, less of a case, but yeah, there's a discussion there. Balance, I think, definitely should have been in part of the original Power 9. Right, so that was my main goal to this. But whether you think about it as, like I said, 10 through 18 or alternate universe Power 9, or in addition to swaps, mix and match, however you want to think of it, these are my alternate Power 9. What do you guys think? I think the ones that are the most debatable, the first two that pop into mind is definitely the Chaos Orb and the Factor, right? The next up, maybe Wheel of Fortune, or actually probably maybe Manager. But I actually feel Manager and Wheel are on par for the next one, in terms of that it's debatable that they wouldn't have fit within the Power 9 or even as an alternate 9. But Balance, I think, yeah, it makes a strong case. The Demonic Tutor, yeah, maybe a little bit less, but yeah, there's a discussion there, and especially that Mind Twist, yeah, there's a strong discussion there. So this is just my thoughts, but like I said, this is definitely something that believe it or not, I've thought to myself for quite a while. What could swap? Why these 9 in particular? Why not that Mind Twist? It's like so devastating. Why not that Balance? And then if you expand it, why not that Library? So these are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. What do you agree with? What would you have swapped? I'm feeling probably like Swords. It's gonna be a big one that people would swap. If there's any creature, maybe a Trike that it could have swapped for, Maze even. Yeah, well, like I said, this is a fun thought experiment. Let me know what you guys think, what you agree with, what you would change, or if you think I basically covered it all and you think I nailed it. All right, thank you guys. Thank you for watching.